In a few short weeks, we'll be getting the next expansion based on the Shadowverse Flame anime, Celestial Dragonblade. Speaking of Celestial, the new card I have for you today certainly seems to have some outer influence to it. Bathe in Rays of Gold as we take a look at Greater Will. Greater Will is a 2 playpoint neutral spell which draws a card and targets an enemy, causing them to deal 0 damage with attacks and effects until your next turn. With 2 very straightforward effects, Greater Will is not a complicated card. The first thing that draws my attention is that it's a 2 playpoint spell that cycles. That in itself puts Greater Will on the radar for Spell Boost Rune, as it's precisely the deck that wants more cheap cycles. It's important to note that the damage reduction effect can target any enemy, including the enemy leader. This means Greater Will should always be live, since we have never seen leaders being untargetable. Reducing damage dealt to 0 is like a pseudo removal where you can fish for more value out of an area of effect board clear on a following turn, or you can go for board locks. Both of these plays are really attractive for spell boost. As far as other decks, control archetypes could find some use out of targeted damage reduction as a temporary removal against tall boards. Some pure combo decks in the same vein as Balian Sword could potentially play it, but 2 playpoints for a single generic draw is expensive when it's not partially giving playpoints back via spell boost. The biggest loss for spell boost with Renaissance Chronicles rotating is obviously Isabel Intrepid Mage. Until we see more of Celestial Dragonblade, it's hard to tell whether spell boost will even be viable or not regardless of Greater Will. The deck will need a new power card to supplement Kuon, so whether or not Greater Will sees immediate play will largely be riding on that. Without Isabel, however, there will no longer be any incentive to run as many Runecraft followers as possible. Rune followers with cheap accelerate effects undoubtedly had a premium over the past year, but that's all going to change once Isabel permanently retires like her fiancé. 2 playpoint cycles make up an invaluable archetype of cards that spell boost will always need to have. The spell boost mulligan and early curve through every single iteration of the deck has always revolved around 2 playpoint cycles as a necessary complement to power cards and as the gears that get your hand moving. Cards that are basically Trail of Light, but with an additional upside such as Angelic Melody, have so much precedent for seeing play in spell boost decks. Among generic 2 playpoint cycles, Greater Will could very well tower above the rest. The extra effect of reducing damage dealt by one enemy is super applicable and easy to use in almost any matchup. Spell boost will always want to play a 2 playpoint cycle on turn 2 and usually on turn 3 as well. Historically, that would never impact the board in any way, so the opponent has some free reign to develop an aggressive board, but Greater Will basically gives you at least 2 points of healing by consistently preventing damage from an early follower. When you frame Greater Will as a 2 playpoint cycle with a bit of healing in advance, which is better than actual healing until later in the game, it's an amazingly potent card for holding spell boost together. Greater Will's affinity for witches really cannot be understated. On turns 4 and 5, when the opponent is starting to throw out strong boards and spell boost is aiming to have some cheap boosted followers to throw out, it's very powerful to basically put an enemy follower into stasis for a turn. It means your spell boost followers can basically be played even more efficiently because you can wait an extra turn before clearing something with Chakram Wizard or Witching Magi. If you draw a removal option a bit late or during the very turn you would need it, Greater Will can buy you that space by temporarily neutralizing a threat before you efficiently clear it the following turn. In this way, Greater Will adds consistency beyond being a cycle because it also gives you extra leniency in drawing spell boost cards. Players have often, jokingly or not, asked for cards that straight up delete leader effects from the opponent. While removing them entirely might be going too far, making the enemy leader deal 0 damage for a turn would provide temporary respite from similar effects to Absolute Modesty. It's pretty clear that side games have shifted away from leader effects that deal most or all of the face damage for you, and since Arya Miasma Fairy rotated, there have been very few leader effects that deal damage at all in the rotation meta. Neckbed is a relatively recent card that deals continuous face damage as the spiritual successor to Ra Radiance Incarnate, but the effect has as much sunlight as the average gamer sees on a Saturday afternoon, so it's remarkably terrible. Greater Will as a reveal has certainly stood out to me because the more I think about the card, the better I think it is. It boils down to this. It's a 2 playpoint cycle that, as a complete bonus, enables spell boost to be both more efficient and more safe. In my eyes, that makes Greater Will a phenomenal spell boost card. Let's not forget, spell boost is the deck where a 2 playpoint cycle remains useful even very late into the game, and doubly so when it comes packaged with a meta tech against damaging leader effects. Whether Greater Will sees play in other control or combo decks is somewhat meta dependent, but there should be no doubt that this allusion to higher forces will remain omnipresent as a spell boost staple.